Well, we are very pleased to have with us once again in studio Julie Gunlock of the Independent Women's Forum. Julie, how are you?
I'm doing great. Glad to be back in the studio.
It's good to see you in studio. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
Very good.
Excellent. All right. By the way, we had Ash Shao of the Washington Examiner on yesterday. She has a big profile piece of Ayaan Hirsi Ali.
Ah, great.
Had the opportunity to chat with Ayaan Hirsi Ali at the Independent Women's Forum, Women of Valor.
It's great.
Ceremony and awards.
Yeah, I was glad I saw her article yesterday, and I was glad she mentioned the Women of Valor dinner. She gave a really inspiring speech. Unfortunately, I had to miss the dinner, but I heard that the speech was amazing, really inspiring. She is just an amazing woman, so we were thrilled to honor her that night.
And you know, this is, I think, a sign of, what the Independent Women's Forum is all about here, honoring a woman who had been rejected by Brandeis University for an honorary degree because of her experiences and
Right.
her opinions based on her experiences. So, I applaud you all for giving her a voice. All right, let's talk food, shall we, Julie?
Yes, but can I say one thing about her? Can I say one thing?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
she
absolutely.
really reminds women, if you hear her speak, she really reminds women of the real war on women, which is happening in many countries abroad where women are forced into marriages and where there's genital mutilation and when women can't drive or vote or participate in civil society, can't own businesses. There are a number of things that happen to women, and as she would say, in some countries that are theocracies, and so I think it's very important that we spread her message, that we give her a voice, again, to remind women of the absurdity of the left's line about there being a war on women here in the United States.
Yes, I would agree with you. And again, I think it's just fantastic that you all did give
Thank you.
her the opportunity to speak. Yes, indeed. All right, now can we talk
Yes,
food a little bit?
our favorite subject.
Can we talk cookie dough?
Yes, another of our favorite subjects.
I know, right?
Right.
And favorite foods. Although I was, I guess, not surprised to see the USDA send an email out this weekend saying, don't eat cookie dough. Right. We've heard it from our moms, right? We may have even told our children this ourselves,
Right.
Don't eat cookie dough. Although I will note that, it is available packaged
It is.
already.
Right.
Just eat it with a spoon.
Right.
But the USDA has told us, right, we need to be aware of this.
Yes.
Just like your mom said, you get salmonella.
Yeah. And many of those cookie dough things that are available are pasteurized. All of the little buggies, the bacteria have been killed. They've been zapped, if you will, to kill those things. But what they're telling people, the real cookie dough they're telling people to avoid is the one that you stick your finger in at home as you're making chocolate chip cookies and you take a couple spoonfuls, or, you might lick the mixer, little tongs, whatever they're called. That's the cookie dough they're telling you to avoid. So again, avoid these sort of things that people do all the time. And really, again, these are things that you can make your own decision. I mean, if the egg smells bad as it's going into the cookie dough, or if you think your eggs are old or weren't sourced from a reputable source, then don't do it. But again, this is a risk. Everybody should be allowed to make a decision people can make on their own.
I would agree. And a lot of folks in the food industry would tell you that, as long as the eggs are refrigerated,
Right.
that the risk of salmonella goes down, particularly if they're refrigerated under 45 degrees. See, we have, we shouldn't actually at our place because we have the eggs that come
Right.
out of the hens and then we use them.
Right.
And so they typically don't go in the refrigerator. So
Right.
that's where you want to stay away from. Again, the
Right.
higher temperature. It's common sense. It's common sense, Julie.
Yeah, and-
the higher the temperature, the more bacteria can flourish,
Right,
right?
and
So the lower the
again-
temperature, the better off you're going to
Let's also just take a moment to think about the fact that the USDA, there is someone paid to send out an email warning people about salmonella from cookie dough. I mean, that alone should make everybody go, government's too big, right? I mean, we've got ISIS, we've got an immigration problem, we've got other problems that government maybe has some role in, but cookie dough and our willingness to eat raw cookie dough should not be a function of the federal government. I would agree.
Yes, I can agree with that. I can agree with that. By the way, I want you to know, as I was reading some of the stories on the cookie dough USDA
Gate.
Email, I did run across something. I'm going to forward this to you. How to make Oreo churros with a vanilla cream dipping sauce. So,
As sometimes,
I think just that headline would make Michelle Obama cry a little bit, don't you think? Mayor Bloomberg is just weeping in the corner, sucking his thumb now after knowing that there are Oreo churros with a vanilla cream dipping sauce in this world.
And I love how the vanilla cream dipping sauce makes it sound a little bit fancy. Sometimes on Twitter, people people will send me truly revolting things, processed food like bologna. Double burgers or something, I don't know, just really gross thing, bologna pizza, something like that. And as I said on Twitter, sometimes my belief in food freedom truly is tested when I hear about some of the combinations that people are either eating or the food industry is actually, hey, I'm all for food freedom, but God, there are some really gross things out there. Go on.
Yeah, no, you're right. There are. I wouldn't put Oreo churros in the gross list. I'd have to try it first.
Oh, really? Oh, that's good of you. Have to try it first.
Whatever. 3 or 4. All right. Now, before we let you go, there's sort of an interesting story that I think is bubbling up, and the mainstream media will probably pick up on this sometime between now and Christmas. But there was a 12-year-old boy in Cleveland who was killed by police. He had a toy gun, and this story has gotten a lot of attention. And now we're starting to see. I've seen a couple of editorials, Julie, down in Mobile, Alabama. A guy named Frank Matthews is trying to call for a nationwide ban on sales of toy guns. I think this is going to be a thing here between now and Christmas that the media will pick up on. So I want to ask you, before this becomes a thing, what do you think about the idea of banning toy guns?
I think it's a terrible idea. It's a stupid idea. And it doesn't matter if you ban it. A kid is going to turn something into a gun. My kids, after I go to school and I pick them up every day, and they go to this big field behind the school. They choose not to play on the playground or in the playground equipment. They want to go in this big field with trees and tall grass. They pick up branches. And they turn them into guns and swords. And so, kids will turn anything into a toy gun. So you're not going to really ban the sort of idea of wanting these kids love this stuff, and they're going to do whatever they can to get them. And again, banning these things really doesn't take them out of the marketplace. We've seen this with other things, other bans on other things, and it just creates sort of another market that's underground. I'm not saying that kids are going to be putting these things in trench coats and going to schools and doing and like, hey, you can have this one for $100, but these bans don't work. And, we need to look at the real issue here, not sort of make these gestures of banning toys, banning toy guns. It won't do anything to solve the problem.
I agree with you. And again, part of it is I think that bans, generally speaking, are an ineffective way of going about solving a problem.
Right.
So first, I think we got to figure out, well, what is the problem here?
Yeah.
Is the problem a tragic but relatively rare instances where a child with a toy gun that doesn't have the orange tip is confused to have a real gun? Because if that's the issue, then let's address that issue.
But this is
Which I think.
Go
ahead.
This is what the media is going to do. You mentioned this relatively rare issue. This is what the media does. They do it with food. They do it with, I write a lot about chemicals. I write about agriculture, but particularly with violence involving guns. They take one incident and they turn it into an ordeal, a national epidemic that requires bans and requires regulations. And this is what we talk about a lot with the food. There might be some sort of outbreak over here, and then the result has to be an all-out ban on certain products. These things are, as you said, are tragic but rare, and they don't require any kind of national response, federal government response, bans, state local, whatever. They just don't require that kind of response. They might require parents taking a little bit more time to talk to their kids, talking about the importance of these decals and orange tips. It might also require, police having some training in a certain area. But again, you make a good point. Banning the thing doesn't really get to the root problem.
Yeah, and in reading this story about the gentleman down in Alabama who, again, I think has the best of intentions here, wants to see kids be safe. He brought up a good point. He says not only does he not buy his own children toy guns, but he doesn't buy them video games in which they could use an electronic gun. And honestly, if we're going to talk about banning toy guns, then we do need to talk about video games as well.
Yeah.
Because you're not talking about the physical object, but you are certainly, if that is the concern here, that this violent play, whether it's cops or robbers, I guarantee my kids running around playing army in the woods with their friends and their paintball guns is way less violent than my kids and their buddies sitting there playing Call of Duty for a couple of hours.
Absolutely.
Way less violent.
Yeah.
So we do need to have that conversation too then.
Right. We do. And then where does it stop? I mean, but I will say, it's my kids playing in that field of grass is less violent, but it's still violent. I've had some bashed heads and some gashes and some scrapes and crying kids and other mothers that don't want to talk to me. And I mean, the kids get fat. So where does it stop? Like maybe
that's because your children are semi-feral.
Absolutely. It's the Oreo churros I give them after school. But I think, where does it stop? Where do we, should my children go home, sit, in a dining room chair and practice penmanship? I mean, I think this really takes, good parenting, good communities, and these kinds of bans, again, just really aren't going to solve the problem. It is a tragic situation, but again, sometimes community leaders, politicians, regulators, and the press, they love this, they don't love this type of thing happening, but this story really helps to move their agenda forward.
Talking with Julie Gunlock from the Independent Women's Forum. And Julie, thank you again for joining us in studio. It is wonderful to see you. And hopefully, before long, I'll see you up there in person.
Thanks for having me on.